Hello and congratulations to this video course on how to boost your engagement in your WordPress site. This is video number 1, the introduction. So once you have gotten people to your website, then you need to keep them there. So if you think about it, you work really hard to do traffic generation, social media, search engine ranking. You get them to your website and they leave and you don't know why. You might have some content, but you don't know why they're not interacting. You don't know why they're not commenting and all that. So engagement is crucial because the more you can get people to engage with your website, the more they will grow closer to knowing you, to liking you, and ultimately trusting you. Once you get all this figured out and you get the engagement, then you can turn them into visitors, into subscribers, and build your email list. So that's essentially the ultimate goal here, because once you get them onto your email list, then you can build a further relationship. And then of course you can sell your products and your services. So the big question is how? How do you get them to stay on your website and get fully engaged? Well, first things first, the way we've laid this video course out is to make sure that the speed of your website is fast, because a lot of times people overlook this factor and they go straight to the engagement plugins or they go straight to the content and they don't know why people leave. Well, if you think about the root cause of it all is because the speed of your site needs to be fast. And that's kind of a no-brainer. So attention spans are getting shorter and shorter. And that is why you need to look at that first. So once you've gotten their attention, you got to keep them engaged, which is the key. So in video number 2, we're going to talk about how you can learn how to test the spot. In video number 2, you'll learn how to test your speed of your WordPress site, because obviously before you need to speed it up, you need to know what your status is. So if you happen to test the speed of the site and it happens to be a big A+, then you're good to go. You don't have to do anything. But of course, on the other side, if you find out that it's an F or D, you need to move it up a few letters up to A or B or C, if C as the max. But generally speaking, you want to do A or B. And you'll see what I mean in just a second when we test it out in video number 2. And of course, video number 3, we'll talk about once you know your speed, how do you actually speed it up? Well, there are 2 factors here. There are plugins, and then there are the way that your web hosting company has set your server up for your WordPress site. Get more into that later on. But the general idea is that there's certain plugins out there that will help you speed it up, and then there are certain plugins out there that may help you a little bit, but don't help you as much as the other ones. So this is based on our tests, so that way you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Video number 4, we'll talk about how you can speed it up by analyzing your web hosting setup. So like I said, some web hosting companies have set up the servers to handle regular sites that are not WordPress, and then some are WordPress only. And we'll talk more about that in just a second. Video number 5 is when we start to talk about the hacks. So video 5, 6, and 7 will be hack 1, 2, and 3. So hack number 1 is all about this. So if you think about when somebody comes to your website after they look at the speed and everything is fast loading on all that, they think about, okay, I'm searching for something specific. They might find it, but then they're going to look more for that. So in other words, they search for XYZ, they want more of XYZ, right? So how can you make it so that it's going to be easier for them to find that information, such as related posts? What kind of plugins can you use to help you with that? So because we've tested things out over the years, we figured out which plugins work well the best in these cases. And of course, when we move on to video number 6, which is hack number 2, we'll talk about getting more people engaged in the comments area. So after they like your content, then the next step after that is they're going to want to comment and engage with you. Now, if they don't see a lot of people engaging with you, they might not actually enter anything in there. So you want to make sure that it's not just user-friendly, but it's fun. So we'll show you plugins that you can use for that as well. And of course, video number 7, we'll talk about the last hack, which is hack number 3, and that is getting people to interact with your website. Now, although we're talking about interaction as a whole, this covers mainly getting pieces of areas of your website, such as polls, such as maybe ads, such as forums, such as little areas of your website that you can still get them to interact. You can actually think of these as mini transactions to get them closer to liking and knowing and trusting you. All right. So that would be the next step after the comments. So these 3 areas are actually very often overlooked, but they're very, very important to getting people closer to wanting to subscribe onto your email list. So after this, of course, we move on to video number 8. And by this point in time of the sequence and of the phase, people are now aware of you. They are aware of what you have to offer, and they want to know more. Maybe they want to buy from you, or they just want to take that relationship further. So in video number 8, we'll talk about how to turn your visitors and get them to turn into subscribers, and ultimately build your email marketing list. So the email marketing list is the asset that you want to have at the end of the day. The blog is important as well, but the email marketing list is extremely important because that is what is going to help you make more money in the long run. All right. So with that said, let's move on to video number 2. Hello and welcome back. This is video number 2, and you will learn how to test the speed of your WordPress site. All right, so let's go ahead and dive in. Okay, so there are 2 tools that we like to use that are free. You don't have to invest any money at this stage, and they're called gtmetrix.com. So the first one is gtmetrix.com. All right, so the second one is actually offered by Google. So if you go to thinkwithgoogle.com/feature/test my site. Again, that's thinkwithgoogle.com/feature/test my site. All right, so this actually tests the mobile site limits, or the mobile speed. So you want to have an idea of how fast it is based on the desktop and the mobile site. All right, so that's why we use both of these sites. So going back to this site, what I did as an example is I went to Google, I found a website that is an e-commerce store. And that's what we're going to use in this test. So obviously in your case, you're going to want to enter your WordPress site here. Okay, so I did a search and I found a website that sells scuba gear. And it's got a huge blog with tons and tons of content, with a lot of reviews, a lot of images, and all of that. Typically, anytime you have a WordPress site that has a lot of images, that in itself will slow you down. So we'll talk later on how to speed things up using those plugins and other ones as well. Now, if you go back to gtmetrix.com and you enter the URL of your website here, and you click on test your site, it'll begin to analyze your website. All right, so we're going to pause this video and let it analyze it, and I'll see you when it's done. Okay, so as we can see here, GTmetrix has given this website a C, which is not horrible, but it could be improved. So if you're at a C or even a B, the goal for you is to try to get at least a few steps better. All right, so if you're a C, try to get to B or A. If you're a B, try to get to A. Or if you're an F, try to get to at least C or B. All right. So if we take a look at GT metrics and see why they say what we say, you can see that it says page speed. It's got an A on a lot of things, and it's got a B on a few things, but it's got an F on several things. So what you want to do is you want to take a look at the F. All right, so we got to click this here. It says serve scaled images. The following images are resized in HTML or CSS. Served scaled images could save a certain amount. Okay, so what they're saying is the images on the site could actually utilize a image optimization WordPress plugin. And we'll talk more about that in just a minute. And if we scroll down, it says enable keep alive. If you click that, the little arrow, it says the host uses Amazon ad system. You should enable keep alive. It serves the following sources. So if you don't know what that means, you can just simply click what this means and it'll tell you what that means. So in terms of practical application, we can definitely see that this site owner has a lot of A's on everything, but they could still optimize their images. All right. So we'll actually cover a lot more detail later. So we're not going to assume that you are the same as this website. All right. So we're going to assume that you might have gotten an F, which is fine. So we're just going through here to help you realize what the tool is saying. So this one says, okay, FFF, add expires headers. So that's actually just a caching thing to deal with cache, which we'll talk about later. It says use a content delivery network. So they're not using a content delivery network such as Cloudflare or Mac CDN and all of that. We'll talk about that in the next video as well. But if we just go through and take a look, you can see this one got a C. It says minified JavaScript and CSS. So a lot of this can actually be done via a caching plugin, which we'll talk about in just a minute. So if we click on waterfall, we can see what is actually loading. So when you go to a specific website, certain elements of that website load first. So what they're showing you is what elements are taking the longest amount of time to load. So if you speed these elements up, you can save a lot of time and speed things up. All right, so let's go to timings, page loads, timings, video, and history. So these are actually premium things and services that you can actually upgrade to use. But for the most part, we just use page speed, Y slowed, and waterfall. All right. Now, oftentimes, the GT metrics system will say, okay, this is a WordPress site, and we'll give you information on how to speed up a WordPress site. If you click on here, it'll tell you how to optimize a WordPress site. So if we go ahead and do that now, it gives you a step-by-step guide on how to optimize a WordPress site, but we're going to cover a lot of this in the next video. So that's what you could use. And of course, if you go to thinkwithgoogle.com, you can also enter that domain here. Okay, it says your mobile site speed is about 5.5 seconds in the United States on 4G. So 4G is fairly fast. So the rating that Google gives it is slow. And it says monthly trend slowing down. And we scroll down, we can get an idea of more detail, such as get custom fixes. It says page speed, avoid an excess DOM size. So you can actually, well, like what we talked about earlier, optimizing images. All right, so for the most part, this is what Google sees. Now, bear in mind that even though we're talking about engagement and how to speed the site up, you want to bear in mind that Google looks at this as well. And because they look at this, they are going to oftentimes base your ranking on your site speed. So the faster your site loads, the better you will get ranking, right? And the more engagement that you get, the higher ranking that you will get as well. All right. So now you know the 2 tools that you can use for free. Let's move on to the next video and talk about how to speed up your website by utilizing certain plugins. Hello and welcome back. This is video number 3, and hopefully by now you have an idea of where your website stands. So based upon that, in this video, we're going to talk about how to speed up your website by using certain and specific plugins. So let's go ahead and show you how to do that and what plugins you should use. Okay, so as we mentioned earlier, that a lot of WordPress sites tend to have a lot of images. And as you know, images have a specific size. Some of them are really big because of a high resolution, or some of them are really small. So if you have really big ones, obviously that's going to slow down your website, because when people visit your page, they have to load all of those images. Now, of course, you might be thinking, well, I have a lot of images, but they are actually very small. Even in that case, when you have a lot of images, but they're not a lot, but there's a lot on that page, even if they're like 100 kilobytes, but you have 10, that's equivalent to 1 megabyte. So it might be fast for somebody with a super fast fiber optics internet speed, but you got to remember, not everybody has that. You might have folks who are in the middle of nowhere and they have slow internet. So you have to keep in mind who is actually visiting your site. So you got a range. All right. So Imagify is what we recommend. They do have a WordPress plugin, but they are also a service that basically what it does is if you have 100 images, it'll go through the 100 images and it'll optimize those images. And you can specify how much optimization that you want. So I'll show you that in just a minute. But it does cost a little bit of money. As you can see, it's about $5, so it's not a big deal. You don't need any of these until you start using it and you realize, okay, I need 2 gigabytes or more. So start with this one. It's $5, not a big deal. And then they have a WordPress plugin and you can install that. Now, if I go over here, which I'm going to go into a real WordPress dashboard, a real site that is actually using Imagify. And here we go. So this is already installed. And you can see it's fairly simple. Once you've installed the plugin, as you can see here, you have normal, aggressive, and ultra. What that means is normal means it'll optimize it a little bit and it will squeeze, let's say, for example, a 1 megabyte image to maybe 750 or 500 kilobytes. If you do aggressive, it's going to go smaller. But at the same time, you're going to also lose quality of that image. So a good way to detect, Imagify actually has a visual comparison. So if you click this, you can see what it looks like. So it says this is the original, this is normal, and this is aggressive. So it's very hard to see, but it's very, very small in terms of the losing the image quality. Now, what I like about it is that you can auto-optimize images on upload. So that means any future images that you upload, it's going to automatically optimize them. And you want to check to back up original images, because let's say there's a problem and there's a mistake. You want to have the backup of the old images so that you can revert back to them if anything were to happen. And then the EXIF data is basically information in the image. So whenever you take an image, it's not empty. There's information inside of it that says different information, such as, when it was taken, and all these other information. So you can remove that information, which of course would make your image smaller, but at the same time, you want to keep it. All right. Because Google actually looks at the images, and sometimes they'll look at the EXIF data. So that's why I recommend actually keeping it. All right, so that's pretty much the main part. You can tell it the sizes of the files that you want to optimize. So it'll take one image and it'll make a thumbnail, a medium, large, post, thumbnail, and all of these here. And that's it. So that's all you have to do. And if you want to go to the media library, you will have the option to actually bulk optimize all the images that you uploaded previously. All right, so you can do that as well. You don't have to, but I highly recommend that you do. So that takes care of image optimization. The next thing I want to talk about is CDNs, or content delivery networks. The way they work is basically like this. So everyone is connected to a web host, and that web host is connected to a specific location. So if you were in, let's say, the UK, and your data center happened to be in London, if you were driving traffic to the site and somebody from, let's say, the United States were to visit your website, their computer internet would have to go all the way to UK, to London, to that data center to view it, which basically means that it's going to load slower for them. Whereas it might load really fast for you, it's going to load slower. So that's why you need a CDN. There are many different types of CDNs. Some web hosting companies will actually have it included for free, but Cloudflare is one of them. And another one is called StackPath. It's actually MaxCDN is now StackPath, as you can see here. All right. So these are two options that you can take. And they also, a lot of times, will have WordPress plugins that will integrate into their system. And of course, last but not least, we're going to talk about caching plugins. Caching plugins basically make it so that if somebody visits your site, you can tell it to do a cache, which means it saves the website on their computer. So that next time when they visit the website, they already have all the images and the website and all that detail on their computer. So it loads really fast. And that's the premise of WP Total Cache. We recommend Total Cache because it's been around for a while and the free version itself is quite powerful. And you don't necessarily have to upgrade to the paid version. Now, as you can see here, as I scroll down, you can actually integrate MaxCDN into the WP Total Cache. All right, so you can do that. And if we go down, we can see there's general settings. And you have general mode, you have page cache. The page cache, you definitely want to enable that. And you have minify. So I don't know if you remember the GT metrics report, but it had information on minify. So as you can see, I would highly recommend that you set it to auto, and then you select minify, JSMin, and minify. Now, most of these information and these settings are by default. So what I would do is I would just tweak it to make it default and see how fast your website loads. If it improves, then great. You can always change this around. But for the most part, just stick with the default settings and you should be good to go. And that's it. This is video number 4, and you are going to learn how to speed up your site even further beyond plugins with how your web hosting is set up. All right, so let's begin. So when it comes to web hosting companies, a lot of people think, okay, as long as I have web hosting, then my WordPress site should load fast. But that's a big misconception, because a lot of hosting companies, the way that they've set up their web host is not really for WordPress. And WordPress tends to utilize a lot of server resources, so you need the right setup. Now, the best analogy that I can give you is this. If you were to have heart issues and you were to go to the doctor, like a general practitioner, then he might look at you and say, okay, well, let's just run a few tests. And he's not really going to know what to look for, right? A few months, he still doesn't know what you have. So then he refers you to a cardiologist. And then the cardiologist looks at you and he says right away, okay, this is what you have. All right. So that's the analogy, is that in this case for WordPress, web hosting companies that specialize only in WordPress will have set things up so that WordPress will run fast. So we highly recommend two web hosting companies. The first one is wpxhosting.com. It's not expensive at all. In fact, it's actually a lot cheaper than a lot of web hosting companies. Now, the nice thing about WPX hosting is if you have any problems with WordPress, like it's acting up or you're having error messages or anything like that, or you want to, SSL certificate installed, their support team is the best. And they will actually help you with anything related to WordPress. So that's what we notice with WPX hosting. And on top of that is, if you were to host with a different company that is not specialized in WordPress, then you would have to purchase a CDN, which is like Cloudflare. And you would have to pay anywhere from $10 to $30 per month just to use Cloudflare on top of your web hosting company. With WPX hosting, they actually have their own content delivery network. So once you pay them, that's it. You get free SSL certificates. They're super easy to install. And you also get backups, daily backups, which you can go to the calendar for the past 30 days and say, I want to revert back to this day, and you just click a button and that's it. Most web hosting companies have it set up so you can't really do that. Especially if you're using cPanel, you can back it up, but it doesn't back up automatically for you. So you can go into the cPanel wizard, into the backup generator, and click backup. But with WPX hosting, it backs it up every single day. So that's a nice feature that they provide. The next web hosting company that we recommend is WP Engine, and that's wpengine.com. They were actually one of the originals web hosting companies, but if you go to the pricing, you might think, oh, that's really expensive. But the reality is that because WordPress sites, as you grow them bigger and bigger, the more plugins that you install, what happens is they get slowed down. In terms of migration, if you have any problems migrating, both sites should actually migrate it for you. We know that WPX hosting does, and they actually will go in, they will migrate all your data and all that. So in terms of customer support, they are phenomenal. WP Engine is as well. All right, that's it.